I used to live in Dallas, Texas. I lived there for about 4 years while I went to grad school. Loved Dallas, incredible city. And the best part about Dallas, the restaurants. The restaurant game in Dallas is on a different level than most cities in the country. So many great places to eat. And one of my favorite places was a spot called Taco Joint. It was this hole-in-the-wall type of place that served unreal tacos. And another great thing about it, it was within walking distance of my apartment. Well, one weekend, my brother flew out to Dallas to visit, and I knew exactly what we were gonna do for lunch on his first day in town. Walk on down to Taco Joint. Now, to get to Taco Joint from my apartment, you have to walk through not so great area of town, and there are a lot of homeless people seemingly on every corner. So my brother and I walk to Taco Joint, order our food, we sit down, and I'm so excited for him to experience these tacos. But once we sit down, he has this weird look on his face. I thought maybe he got the wrong order or got order envy and wish he had ordered something else. So when I asked him what was wrong, he replied, "Man, I can't believe how many homeless people we passed today. It was sad to see." And my immediate response, "Oh yeah, you get used to it though. They're out there all the time." And in that moment, I quickly realized how numb I had become to these homeless people. I got so used to seeing them that I just stopped seeing them, and it hit me. I should have felt the same way my brother did, but I had overlooked an injustice. Now, when we hear injustice, we tend to think of the big issues in the world, right? Issues like famine, slavery, or oppression. But injustice doesn't occur simply when something bad happens. No, injustice happens when someone is treated in a bad or even an evil way. When a human being is treated as though they're less than a human being, well, that's injustice. When someone is treated like property or trash, as if they're expendable, or as if they're not deserving of dignity, safety, or even not having enough food to live on, they're being victimized by injustice. And that's wrong, and we all know it. That kind of injustice isn't difficult to see. When someone is treated as less than the person God made them to be, we all look and go, that's not right, that's evil. But the injustice we're going to talk about today isn't the injustice out there. It's not the injustice that we think only happens in other places, the kind we see and raise our eyebrows at. The injustice we want to talk about today is the kind we don't always see. And that's what this series is about. And not injustice in the world, but injustice in our world. Like, come on, injustice is easy to see when it's a headline or a dramatic story, but when it's impacting people in our own world, like sometimes we may even overlook it. We may even choose not to see it. So even though we can easily spot injustice in the world, we somehow don't see the injustice or evil happening right in front of us. Maybe there's a student who just gets picked on relentlessly at school. Or maybe there's a family in your community who are suffering because of a loss. Or maybe there's even a student, like if we're being honest, right here in your small group who you know is struggling through some injustice, whatever it is. Injustice is happening all around us. It really is right here, right in front of us. But here's the issue. We can't be a part of the solution to problems that we don't even see. We can't change what we don't see. I think we all care about injustice and we want to see things made right, but the first step in making things right is to simply start seeing it. That's why I think we need to look to Jesus. See, Jesus always noticed when things weren't right. He never missed it. And I think if we can follow his example, we have the potential to change the world around us. Today, we're going to take a look at the book of Matthew. It's a book written by one of Jesus' closest followers. And in this story, Jesus makes a big statement on addressing the injustice in our world. Here's how Matthew puts it. Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. So Jesus was teaching, healing, and helping people as he shared the message of God's kingdom. Now, when Jesus talked about the kingdom, he talked about things like slaves being set free, and the oppressed being rescued, the hungry being fed, and the poor being taken care of, and those who have been cast out being welcomed in. In other words, Jesus was talking about justice. He was talking about all the injustice in the world being made right in the kingdom of God. That was his message, and because of that, everywhere he went, Jesus had something to say and do about injustice in this world. Here's what I mean. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few." So maybe you heard those verses and thought, of course he said that. He's Jesus. But what does that have to do with me? Well, a lot actually. See, in these two verses, and really all of Jesus' life, he modeled for us what an effective response to injustice really looks like. First, Jesus saw. The crowds were full of people who were confused and helpless, lost like sheep without a shepherd. They were forgotten, hungry, hurt, oppressed, and in great need. And you know what? Jesus noticed. He saw them. He didn't overlook them. He didn't discover them a year after first seeing them. He didn't keep going without first stopping and seeing. Jesus saw the people around him. He noticed the need around him. And he noticed when a human being wasn't being treated like a human being. He saw the evil. And when he saw, Jesus cared. The verse says Jesus had compassion, which is just another way to say Jesus deeply cared about the people he saw in need. His heart was moved for them. And that's what should happen when we see injustice. Our hearts should be moved. So Jesus saw, he cared, and then most importantly, he acted. He actually did something about what was right in front of him. I mean, come on, like not only did he love people, and not only did he feed them and heal them and forgive them and set them free, here's the crazy thing. He actually called his followers to do the same. Look at the last part of this verse. He said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few." Well, what's a harvest exactly? Well, let me give you a little farming 101. When a farmer plants seeds and cares for his crops, what happens? Well, they begin to grow. And eventually, the farmer gets to gather all those crops and things that have grown. He gets to harvest those crops. See, in the same way, Jesus is saying that there's a big potential harvest in this world. But while the need is huge, the people who are actually seeing, caring, and doing something about it, well, that number is few. That's why Jesus called his followers to step into the work and start doing something about the injustice and evil around them. And in the same way that he pointed it out to his disciples, he's pointing it out to us too. But in order to actually respond to injustice the way Jesus did, we first have to see. Because serving starts with seeing. Jesus saw, he cared, and then he acted. He changed the lives of people every single day who are being impacted by injustice. And here's the amazing thing. He's inviting us to do the same. I mean, come on, can you just imagine? Could you imagine what would happen in your schools or your homes, in your communities, if you started responding to people around you the way Jesus did? Jesus knew that when we see and care and then act, we can make a real difference. It's absolutely possible. But to make a difference, we need to follow Jesus' model. First, we have to see. Serving starts with seeing. We're going to have to start seeing the poverty, the need, the racism, hurt, and crisis that is right in front of us. We're going to have to open our eyes and see the evil if we want to do something about it. So today, maybe you just need to commit to begin praying this simple prayer. God, open my eyes. Second, we need to care. Like once we begin to see, we have to care. Our hearts need to break for the injustice happening around us. And honestly, come on, for most of us, the reason our hearts don't break isn't that we don't care. If we're being real, it's because we're not moved by it, because it's become so normal to us. We become so used to it that we've forgotten this isn't how it's supposed to be. So I think the best place to start is by asking God to help us remember. God, break my heart for what breaks your heart. And third, we have to do. We have to follow in Jesus' footsteps and actually take a step towards doing something to help right the wrongs in this world. If that thought is overwhelming, don't worry, don't freak out. I'm not asking you to step into every injustice in the world and not stop till it's all fixed. We can't do it all, but we can do something. We can serve someone. So today, start by simply saying this prayer. God, use me. See, care, do. That's the model Jesus set before us to follow when it comes to injustice. And I believe with all of my heart, it's a model that can change the world. It can change our world. But watch, it all starts with seeing, because serving starts with seeing. So this week, I just want you to focus on the first step. Focus on seeing. Ask God to open your eyes to the injustice around you. Suffering, poverty, hate, and racism, people who are being forgotten, bullied, made to feel worthless. Just ask God to help you see it. And remember, serving starts with seeing. We can't be solutions for problems we don't even see, but I truly believe that when you start to see, I'm telling you, you'll be a generation who truly brings change.